Today's mixing quick tip is as follows. Use subtractive EQing before boosting frequencies. Now, most of you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Some of you, maybe this is a little bit newer of a concept. So I'll explain by demonstrating what I've done in this project, of sort of an overarching idea of how I'm EQing all of these tracks together, and then I'll get into some of the details. So on top here you see a representation of all the different EQ stuff that I've been doing with all these different tracks, and you can see there's a whole bunch of high pass and low pass filtering going on, and this is actually a very strategic thing. It's, first of all, I'm taking out all the unnecessary low end of many of these different tracks in the song, and I'm also taking out a lot of unnecessary high end frequencies for the same reason. I want to get rid of all the things that are not necessary for that sound in the song, and then from there I can see how it fits in the mix. Normally what happens is cutting the low end will make that track sound a little bit more articulate, and that's because of frequency masking. I'll go into detail a little bit later. And then also I'm taking a lot of the high-end frequencies that doesn't pertain to some of these tracks, so that all the other items that need that high-end frequency presence in the song, they have room to breathe, and these other tracks are not going to eat up all of that space and cause a lot of clutter, and the song itself will start to sound muddy and unclear and not as punchy and defined as it could be. Now I'll give you an example with this track here. So I'll solo and play it. This sound, this is nothing more than a background noise that is kind of like creating some atmosphere in the song, creating energy, and you can see the volume swell comes and it comes up, and then towards the end it has this sort of thing like indicating an area of interest and going into a drop. Now this song, or this track itself, I'll take all of the EQing stuff that I've done, I'll take it off, and then you can hear what it is. It's actually a very low-end boomy noise that personally I would not want in my song. But when I cut the low frequencies, now the whole song, the sound of this thing becomes a lot more articulate, and it almost sounds brighter, and that is the masking effect, is all this low-end frequencies. When it's there, it actually causes your perception to not really fully perceive those high-end frequencies. It's doing a sort of masking effect is what it's called. And the higher that low-end energy, the more the frequency masking is going to occur. So now, what I did with this sound is I took out that low end, and I can still hear there's like some muddy kind of stuff going on. So then what I did was I used a really big bell curve cut at about 200 frequencies, and that got rid of more of that mud that I was hearing. But within the song, I think it still didn't quite jump out, and I wanted it to have a little bit more in-your-face type of a sound. So that's why I boosted here at about 500 or 450 hertz, and it's quite a high boost. And this may sound like it's going against what I'm talking about, but what I'm doing is I'm cutting heavily the low end here and here, that it kind of took away some of that in-your-face mid-range, and then I'm putting in a little bit higher end frequencies that aren't as muddy, but will have a similar effect of just being in your face and full and rich sounding. So now when I mix this into the song, it has a lot more atmospheric presence that's not boomy, not muddy, but a little bit more in your face. But I felt that it was still a little too high-end, shrilly, competing with the vocal, competing with some of the synths and whatnot, some of those important noises. So I also did a high pass. And this is not significant of a high pass, but what that's going to do is set that sound as a sound source that's a little bit further away from the listener. And the reason why I'm doing this and the theory behind it is that the further away a sound source is, the less likely you are to hear the most high-end frequencies, because low-end frequencies travel better than high-end frequencies do. This is true when a sound source has to travel through, let's say, a wall. The low-end frequencies will travel better through that wall. But from a distance perspective, the high-end frequencies will travel less far than those low-end frequencies as well. Anyways, so this sound I also ended up boosting some of the high-end, but boosting this much of a high-end causes too much high-end to occur. So all I wanted was this, like, this section here, then I cut off and rolled off the very high-end stuff. So the net effect is as follows. So before any of this, it's so radically different of a sound now that I've EQ'd it in this way. Yeah, so what was I saying about the distance of the sounds? The other thing you want to do is, if you want to make a sound more distant, roll off the high ends and then add more reverb, add more reverberation, reflections. The higher the ratio that should be to the actual sound source itself. That should be a no-brainer. You add reverb, it sounds like it's further away. That shouldn't be too much of a surprise. Now let's go with a sound source that is more of a lead and more should be in your face type of thing. So before any of this EQing, I'll bypass the multiband filter and then I'll bypass the low end. This here is actually competing with the sub bass, so I don't need the very low end sub, and I'll show you here. You can see there's a lot of low end frequencies there, and it's competing with a sub bass. So what I did was I cut at about 75 hertz or so. So it really does, like, low end, it brings a little bit of balance to that low end, so it's a little bit tighter, but I wasn't done there. I didn't want to just EQ it out. I wanted to dynamically affect this and get it to sound as punchy and in-your-face lead without squashing and totally removing those low frequencies. So the second thing I did was I used a multiband compressor, and in these two sections here I expanded and I did a little cut. This is to remove some of that low-end muddiness, and then here this mid-range from about 500 to 2K I boosted quite significantly, but compressed that sound so that it's just tight and punchy and more in your face. So let's do before and after this. So you can see it has a little bit more attack and more like mid in your face attack, but not too much, and it got rid of some of that mud. Now the thing here with this sound, it's not so much the subtractive part because you can see here I'm boosting and then I'm compressing the hell out of that mid-range. But before I did any of that, what I'm doing is I'm getting rid of the low end because it's competing with a sub bass. Then I'm removing the mud, and then I'm boosting the mid frequencies to get that bite and that lead in your face sound. So I'm not just reaching for the high frequencies and boosting. I'm not going to the mid range and boosting. I'm strategically taking out what shouldn't be there. Then I'm emphasizing the stuff that I want there. So I'm emphasizing the attack. I'm emphasizing the in-your-face frequency range only after the fact. So that's what I want to get across with this video, is that the more strategic thing to do is to remove what shouldn't be there in the sound source. That might be the low end, that might be mud, that might be a very specific frequency that's causing problems in the song. Remove that. That might be the high end because the sound itself is supposed to sound more distant, like a pad noise or a background noise, and you might cut the high end. Any one of those things, do all of that stuff first, then see how that sound fits within the mix, and then make a mixing decision on how it should fit. If it should be more in your face, you boost some frequencies here, you compress some frequencies there. If it should be kind of just in the background, maybe you'll also add some reverb, do some other type of thing like that, maybe some delay, etc. So that's my mixing quick tip of today. Hopefully you like that, and please like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. That definitely shows me that what I'm doing is valuable to you guys. And anyways, thanks for watching, everyone. Take care. See you in the next video.